Okay, maayo na adlaw mga taimjuan. This is your fellow pre-service teacher, Sandra Visha Kabigan, and I will be teaching you about the most frequently used na mga pamaagi or methods or strategies that teachers regularly use, of course, in the past, in the present, and in the future. So buckle up, hang on to your seats, and find a comfortable place to stay at home, and you can watch this while lying down on your bed or drinking a cup of tea or a hot chocolate to stay hydrated. So let's begin. So, of course, before any activity or discussion that we venture into, we must set up the objectives or the short term goals to be aware of what exactly are we getting into and what is to be expected of you after the end of this journey. So, first objective we have is you're going to discuss among yourselves the effective methods that teachers commonly use and the delivery of the instruction or in student groupings in a multigrade classroom. Second, you're going to internalize or reflect on the significance of the procured progression of the planning guides for each instructional method, particularly the two most used instructional methods. And then lastly is you're going to adapt the methods that you have learned through accomplishing the final assessment no at the very end of this lesson, which is a Google Forms procured by one of my teammates. So now that that's said and done, let's move on. So here we have two different images. Now, one is something so commonplace that we can identify it almost instantly, and the other is not as much. No, the one on my right. So, but putting together certain characteristics from these two, we can affirm that they share certain similarities. No, at this moment, I hope that you have perhaps deciphered that the first photo, the one on the left, is the photo of a classroom or of a typical school environment. So the one on the right, on the other hand, is a factory. And believe it or not, some critics, some educational analysts, or even students or teachers like us have indeed concluded that these two places or these two images are so eerily complementary that it pushes us into an aha moment. So basically, this illustrations showcases a message, no, that entails the factory, literally the factory model of education. And how so, Sandra? So how are they similar? So let's just take into the account the strict atmosphere and the rules that we have to follow in the classroom. Same as the factory, they have rules and regulations or safety procedures that they have to follow, and the uniforms, no, that we have to wear, and then usually they're stark white. No, that's a bit a controversial topic, and of course, the harsh training that some students, especially from the older generation, has to undergo. No? So the implication is that schools are often woefully outmoded and or outdated. No, there are certain methods or procedures or standards of education that has not changed even up to this day. And we, the teachers of the future, we need to change it up and promote magis, kumbaga, especially for a multi-grade no, na classroom where we have to adjust to suit the needs of our learners. And we can affirm and bear witness to this kind of teaching method. No, so what does our classroom typically look like? No, so the teaching method that we usually bear witness to is the teacher. No, is typically standing in front of the room. That's just a podium. That's just a pinaka front. And after the lesson, we often complete a lot of worksheets, a lot of tests or tasks at our desk or sa Philippines, sa armchair lang, no? For the teacher to assess if we have indeed learned something from her or from him. And when we hear the bell ring, no, like indicate nga recess or lunchtime, we are immediately overjoyed because why not? No, recess is our favorite subject. We consider it as such and the like. So this bland picture of our learning experience is actually quite alarming, and it has not changed even so when the pandemic hit us all. So it still hasn't. So in fact, no, we are doing the same thing online. Like me here discussing in front of you, and afterwards, me and my teammates or the other groups are going to give out or to hand out certain assessments for you to answer. So the teaching and learning experience, as from what we can affirm, is focused on one total group. No, here in the bullet you can see it, meaning students who share the same subject or total group or the same grade in the curriculum. Not much emphasis for the multigrade classes, right? So, and other than that, the teacher still maintains her role. No, she is a very strategic. She or he is a strategic or the central figure of the classroom or of the group. And then there are also rules and regulations that we are consciously or unconsciously embedded with or nakasanayan na nato, and we don't question it as much. So the teacher sustains her role or should sustain her role. So doing otherwise, no, especially katong mga students nga medyo problematic. I don't think that's the right term, but katong medyo hyper, um, they doing otherwise could lead to punishments. No? And lastly, so the tone. So in regards to the tone, as we've discussed, kanina sa factory, no, medyo cold. The tone or the mood of the classroom is often flat, meaning it's not too harsh, it's not too bright, or just or lively. It's just plainly flat, and the teacher, of course, and the students might be deflated. That's why, because of the school hours or the workload that we have to accomplish. But that's another problem for another time or day. So moving on. In fact, in our classrooms, now the most dominant form of instruction, which cannot be denied, relies on the lecture recitation format, the one that I've talked about kanina, no, about the teacher being in front of the room and etc. For the large part of the learning process, the students are the passive participants, and the teachers, no, not surprisingly, are the ones who have greater control of the crowd or of the students. So sila ang pinaka most active. No, it is a very tiring profession, gayud. Because imagine, um, for many days and for many hours of each day, the teacher is expected to perform at her utmost best, not to talk for hours on end and to different grades, to different learners, how much more in a multigrade classroom. No nga, kasi nga mga abilidad ang iyang ma-encounter in the classroom. So, no matter how we approach the classroom in an effort to describe and understand what is going on, the teacher comes across as a coach, as a quarterback, as the referee, labi na kung na mag-aaway, and even as the rule maker. And such are based by Good Lad's research paper. And now, hence, in relation to his study, here are the different methods for multigrade that you can see that are used in a regular total group classroom setting. But it can also be such methods can also be effective towards teaching learners in a multigrade classroom. So, these are the most common 8 methods. You have recitation, discussion, cooperative learning, peer tutoring, role playing or gamification, group studies, self directed learning, and then the modular learning, which is rampant or timely in the time of the pandemic. So, reminder that these common ones aren't exactly problematic in any way, no, or ineffective. You just have to have the right timing and the right place and the right plan to utilize it. So, first method is the method recitation or recitation. So it is regularly used in very large whole class ng mga groups, but it may be utilized for small groups or a one-on-one discussion, especially for learners with moderate disabilities or learners who have very low self-esteem. No? It consists of question answer drills over the content that we have just gone through. It is the practice of a single student no, reciting a lesson to the teacher. And grabe, no? From experience, we can say na cool bag yun, maka-pressure gini siya nga methods. No? But it is a good tool to identify kung kinsay nagtuon or dili. But we have to remind ourselves that not all of the learners' preferences or styles can align to recitation. So we have three characteristics, as you can see on the slide for the recitation, which are first, recitations, they are distinctly identified for their explanatory presentations of kanang mga organized kayo nga information that is often kanang front run sa teacher or an independent study. And then second is they monitor the students through a they monitor the learning of a student through questions that requires a single correct answer response, no, and any response other than that is actually wrong. So it uses convergent kumbaga ng mga questions, no. That's what we should be reminded about that recitation. Kanang mag-ask a question, isa ra gyud ka answer ang makuha. So it's very book bound. And then third, you publicly evaluate the responses of the students for accuracy. So sorry for the background music. I guess you can hear that, but don't mind it. So focus muna tayo. So this method works best with the factual or convergent type information gathering and with the students of the same ability level, no, in the multigrade classroom. So it's for now it seems ineffective, but through modification, kumbaga, it can be made effective. So this is commonly used to gain feedback, on the knowledge of your learners. So there are also disadvantages. So the long-term effect on many students is that it dampens, it discourages them to answer questions, especially for low achievers or ones nga dili gid ni ideal sa ilang learning method for them, which is a huge possibility in a multi-grade classroom. So students learn that it's better to just stay quiet, no? Like, shh, yan, saba kay kanang bright na lang mo answer, no? The ones who are really competent when it comes to oral recitation. No, sila na lang ipastorya. So this method also can stifle the creativity or stifle the teacher's creativity because it requires a well-organized content or preparation and good oral communication skill needed as a teacher, and steps must be followed in a prescribed order to hinder the possibilities of exploration or other kinds of answers. Kaya, as I've mentioned kanina, in the recitation, no, isa ra gyud ka answer ang imuhang kwaon from the learners. So this method encourages, of course, the memorization of facts and does not encourage nor allow for the development of the higher order thinking skills. And like I have said kanina, it is more ideal if you want to assess the knowledge of your learners. And so, for that, to eliminate the negative effects, now here is a planning guide for us teachers now on what to do during recitation. So first is we're going to prepare the questions that we're going to ask, First, of course, you're going to write them down either on your notepad, or on your phone, and you try to memorize it. And then second is you arrange them in a purposeful order, and you try them out to your colleagues or to your friends. And kung ano ba gyud yung effective ba maka-arrive ba gyud taan nga answer, no? If not, then that's time for you to make revisions or corrections for your questions. And then second is you're going to ask your questions slowly, especially in the multigrade classroom. Not just stop and think before asking your questions, just to get a feel of the room. Is it the right time for the students? Is it the right momentum for you to take this and question out of the park? And secondly is you're going to ask and wait patiently for the learner's response. No, be patient. No, be understanding towards their responses. No, give them more time. And then, of course, the third method under the planning guide is you're going to listen intently to the answers. No, show interest in the students' responses to motivate them. And you have to listen to all of the responses, whether they be right or they be wrong, from slow and fast learners. And afterwards, and then you can evaluate them, not constructively. Also, to increase the student participation, students should prepare convergent type ng mga questions connected to the discussion to be used during recitation that only has one right answer. So instead of the teacher constantly asking questions or using the questions of the students, no, ngayon lang make students are instead expected to pair up, no, in a multi-grade setting, to pair up and ask each other the questions. So, first thing is you're going to have the preparation. So they have to, you should instruct students to at least prepare 5 written questions and answers, and while you prepare 10 questions for yourselves, or inanaba ka nga method. So, and then during the exchange, you're going to help learners uh, during the exchange, you're going to help students to orally exchange their questions and answers in an effective manner while you listen and while you comment to them. For example, no, student A, let's si Luis, no? Luis asked a question, and the young partner kay si Eliza's, and Eliza will be the one to give the answer. And then Luis, afterwards, ma-hear niya ang answer ni Eliza is he's going to evaluate Eliza's answer. Eliza's answer. And then afterwards, Eliza na said, I'm mag-ask questions. So it's that kind of a routine. And during this process, you're going to listen and you're going to comment from time to time. No? It's actually quite extensive and an extensive thing to do in a multi-grade classroom setting. So possibly having an assistant teacher to be there with you is of a great help, truly. No? And then during the evaluation, so you're going to evaluate the questions and the answers. You're going to correct the questions and then teach learners how to use the right questions for learning. No? Katong mga questions ka maka-reflect it on learners about what they've learned, etc. So be clear. If reminder lang ani, and the last step of the planning guide for students is you have to be clear, and if the response is correct or otherwise, and then if correct, then praise them. If otherwise, it's time for you to elaborate as to why. So after all, corrective feedback has been shown to improve student achievement. So this shall encourage them to learn beyond simple spoon feeding. No? And so here you also have other strategies under recitations to effectively counteract the negative effects. First, you're going to extend the wait time after a question for them to answer. No, it can be a few seconds or a few minutes, no, depending on the student. And then, secondly, is use cooperative learning structures, no, that allow students to confer with each other before answering, just for them to really arrive at the expected or the desired response. And then while doing so, keep a tally, no? in the multigrade classroom of who has been called on to ensure that all students and from different grade levels are able to get the equal opportunity to respond to the questions. So again, I think this is the last slide for recitation. So recitation is most effective when used for basic skills instruction, where all the students are learning at the pace no nga same lang sila. So it needs careful planning, patience, and a show of interest to which are really central towards the effectiveness of this method. Now let's move on to the second method. So that was quite uh, a loaded na report, but let's take this gradually as we can. So we have discussion. So discussion is another method that uses a well thought out na questions, na mga thought provoking na questions aimed to perplex learners, no? In order to stimulate thought and conversation. So, more ka nakipag-debate and parang open forum lang in the classroom. So, whereas recitation, di ba kanina, it asks many questions, pero dapat mag-arrive lang sa single answers. On discussion, on the other hand, so it asks fewer questions that generally have more than one right answer. So, in fact, in a discussion method, the teacher does not talk at every turn of the questioning. Her role there, or his role of the teacher, it's just to keep the discussion moving, flow like water, kumbaga, by raising, probing, but related ng mga questions. So the teacher yields the floor to the learners or to the students to speak at considerable length, no? To respond to the observations made by their peers and bring in outside information or another perspective to illustrate the points of view. All in all, in the discussion process, the teacher is merely a facilitator. No? So diretso na ta sa planning guide for discussion. So you have your two steps. First is you're going to, like recitation, prepare the questions for discussion. You need to develop a question based on your intended purpose. And you have to write it down, of course, or not. Decide on how you will present it to your learners. Is it orally? Is it on the blackboard? No, para mas dramatic. And then abigyan mo like, pak, here's the question, no? And allow chaos to ensue, or you can put it in a handout, whatever you prefer, as long as it's good, as long as it's effective inside a multigrade classroom. So be sure gid sa imong question nga maka-perplex siya sa learners, dili siya kana maka-bored out of their minds, and review your question with the learners until they understand it the way that you do. No, ayo po nang grabe po ka existential nga mga questions, no, kay Mariag. We start to doubt ourselves na natin mga trust issues. So use non-questioning techniques to facilitate the discussion, meaning it's not the same as recitation. No, there's an allowance for learners to ardently express their viewpoints or a diverse set of responses that often raises additional questions, no, or inquiries for learners. Just allow them, no? Medyo ang discussion is more free flowing sa mga students. So it's actually quite fun, no? It's good for politics or science ng mga topics, no? And then, of course, there are 4 general approaches that can be used after a student has just finished speaking. Whether kanang kamulo pa, it's not really the end, or afterwards, you can either do both of that, no? Either do one of those. Yeah. So first, we have here the 4 general responses: statements, student questions, signal, and silences. So first, statements. So if you have questions that you would like to ask in order to facilitate the discussion, rethink them as a statement. No, for example, instead of saying, "Na, do you believe that all people feel that way?" No, in a certain scenario, you might say, "Na, I know several people who have different feelings about that. You can also use a restatement of what you think a student might be saying na. Basta kay ang point sa statements is that you have to avoid falling into the central teacher nga role, no? Nga questioning roles sa recitation. You have to keep the discussion going among the learners. That's the whole point of the statement, not just to probe their minds further on. And then second, you have the student questions. So provide for a student or the class a question in regards to what a speaker has contributed. For example, a student had just said that people who make lots of money, who are billionaires like the or millionaires like the Kardashians, no, hala sila ang mga people, they are insensitive to the poor. This is just an example. So other students could be encouraged, no, to ask, can you tell us why do you believe that? Ana, para mas hindi na siya controversial, but like, para mas kuan pa sila, makastorya sila even more, no? So they can really express more, no? And then third, you have signal. So signal your reception of what the student is saying without taking or holding the floor to yourself. No, you might use phrases such as "Ooh, that's interesting." Kana lang ang mga signals. Interesting lagi ng topic. Ooh, I had never thought of that before. Or wow, amazing. Debak. Ano mga, or maybe not that one, but you get the drill of the signal, no, sa inyong learners para murag, oh, you're going to the right direction that I want you to be. So go on, continue. Amazing. Good job. Congrats. Mga inana. And then lastly, you have the silences. No? Kung gusto kayo dramatic. No? Say nothing at all, but maintain a deliberate, appreciative silence for 3 seconds or so. Kanang dili pud kanang poker face lang ka sa kaning senses, like of course there's a casual nod of agreement or inanha ba, no, until the original speaker resumes or another student enters the scene, no. If the silence is too long or too awkward, then that's the time where you have to act quickly just to save the momentum. And then, of course, discussion, unlike recitation, overall, begins with a teacher question, with a teacher question that's aimed at perplexing your learners and therefore encouraging them to have a student-to-student dialogue. It makes them become self-directed and cooperative learners, and it definitely works well with multiple achievement levels or in a multi-grade classroom. No, ideal kay siya kaninga method. And then we're done with the first two. Moto sila ang pinaka kanang dominante gid nga mga forms based on research by Goodlad. Again, so here we're now on the second half of my report, and it's already 28 minutes in. But hopefully, no, you have the time and the understanding to continue. If not, take a break muna, no, para dili ma-overstimulate ang atong brain. So now we are on the second half of the report. So teachers really ought to be flexible gayud to explore other methods nga effective for teaching. So these are procured to give you a picture of what other strategies that you can utilize in a multigrade classroom setting. So teachers definitely have to use a wide variety of methods. If the student motivation, if you want your students' attention and motivation to be sustained. Thus, I present to you the other commonly used methods for multigrade classes, starting with cooperative learning. No, cooperative learning, which is sometimes called as small group learning, is don't mind the background again. It is an instructional strategy in which small groups of students work together to achieve a common task. Now in multigrade, so how can you do this with similar learning styles or preferences of your learners or abilities? They're the ones who you ought to group together in cooperative learning. No? So each group member in cooperative learning is individually accountable or responsible for a part of a task. Now in other cases, group members have to band or work together like a fellowship without a formal role assignment. So they have to have ownership, no, of teaching and learning. And learning is no longer a sole responsibility of the teacher. This is since students have more opportunities to actively participate in their learning, question, and they can challenge each other, they can share, and they can discuss their ideas and internalize their meaning. So, cooperative learning is definitely effective to increase the students' self esteem, their motivation, and their empathy towards one another, which you can use in the multigrade classroom setting. So for the next method, here, this is actually a lot faster now than the first half. So here we have peer tutoring. So in peer tutoring, it is definitely a flexible and a peer mediated strategy that involves students serving as the academic tutors or tutees. So typically in the multigrade classroom, a higher performing student is being paired with a lower performing student to review critical or academic or behavioral concepts. So here we have two in the screen. Here we have two effective types that are ideal for MC or multi-grade classes. So first you have cross age peer tutoring. Not older students are being paired with younger students to teach or to review a certain skill, and the positions of the tutor and tutee does not change. So the older student serves as the tutor and the younger student is the tutee. So the older student and the younger student can have similar or differing mga skill levels. And then also this is also effective for learners with disabilities, so they can fortify their social skills and the like. And then you have the second one, which is the same age, no? Same age peer tutoring. So peers who are within 1 or 2 years of age are being paired to review certain key concepts of the lesson. So students who have similar ability levels or a more advanced student can be paired with a less advanced nga learners. So students who have similar abilities as well can have an equal understanding of the content, material, and the concepts. So this is definitely an effective routine wherein students' skills are being served as teachers to other students, so they can, which varies across and within differing grade levels in a classroom. And then you have group studies. So I think group study is not the most ginagamit yun in our setting na in the Philippines. We don't usually see this, but in other classes internationally they use group study. Kanilang kay more ato-ato lang ang group study na. So the study group comprises students who study in the same class or in the same batch. No, works well with multigrade. Before forming a study group, it should be seen that all the participating students must share a common topic or syllabus in the multigrade class for studying so that they can openly, share their views with one another. And the participating students should regularly meet and discuss the topics with each other. And the group can be a formal or informal discussion. So as teachers, so this can be made effective to exhibit when you observe learners are getting behind a certain topic. So you can group them together with those who have comprehended the topic in advance, which can serve as a review on their part. So it's like hitting two birds with one stone. So sometimes another student's perspective on a topic rather than a teacher's can help other learners progress. So that's the whole point of the group study. I think we're almost done. We're now in role play or the gamification part. So role playing, as we know, it's working through a situation or a scenario or problem by assuming roles and practicing what to say and what to do in a classroom setting. And this kind of learning experience has several benefits and advantages when it is implemented skillfully in a multi-grade classroom setting. So when students of different grades immerse themselves, kumbaga, in role-play situations, it becomes an avenue for them to present and to discuss distinct perspectives of a certain role or event to the other, and playing other games, no, ikaw na himo, kanang gamification process can also playing games with one another can also help them to and you to assess their current skill level and what are their learning gaps for further enrichment, no. So this situation does not really require much kind of strict orderly manner, but you still have to prepare in this, no? So that you can help learners arrive at the expected achievement level. And then this is the second to the last. We have self-directed learning. So in self-directed learning, students, their skills and their strategies are being strengthened for a high level of independence and efficiency in learning either individually or in combination with other students, like what we're doing now in eLearn. No? Since the teacher cannot be everywhere or with each student simultaneously, the teacher shall then therefore share instructional responsibilities with students. So, but it's important for us, to give a context of the clear rules and the routines, no, to make such a shared responsibility productive. So students will then know what the teacher expects. They know what assignments to work on, when they are due, how they're graded, how to get extra help, and where to turn assignments in. So I think this method is being implemented slowly at this point in time. So in self-directed learning, students learn how to help one another and themselves. So at an early age, so students are expected to develop independence in a multigrade classroom setting. So the effective multigrade teacher shall then establish a climate to promote and develop this kind of independence. For example, when young students enter the classroom, no, for the very first time, it can be online or not, they receive help and guidance not only from the teacher but from the older students in a multi-grade classroom. So in this way, they also learn that the teacher is not the only source of information. And then lastly, no, you have modular. So of course, ever since we have been struck by the effects of the pandemic, we have to ensure that even in remote learning situations, our learners are able to acquire, at the very least, no, a self-contained package of learning activities. So similar to self-directed learning, it pushes modular learning pushes learners of different grade levels to have more autonomy or independence or freedom on how and what they want to learn. So self-pacing lang atong ginatudlo sa ila. So as educators of a possible or extended modular learning experience, no, in the future, we must ensure that elements of instruction in the modules, the specific objectives, the teaching learning activities, and evaluation are made effective for the new normal, even in the absence of physical or direct contact with the learners. So, this is perhaps, without a doubt, the most challenging method to instill. And currently, educational systems, including ours in the Philippines, are doing their utmost best to resolve many issues found when utilizing this method in the multigrade classroom setting or in regular classroom setting. So, still, this helps them, no, to develop independence, and you can meet them halfway as teachers to sustain their interest and confidence by giving notes on modules that you can either contact them or you can help them by saying that they can contact you or to search for other relevant sources online or to ask perhaps an older student, not through social media or a guardian to guide them. You know? And then that's it. So that will be all for my video presentation. I hope you have learned and have at the very least reflected on the challenge that I have left you at the beginning of this report. Remember the picture. So always have that mental picture to push you and to motivate you to try and learn other methods that can be made effective in a multi-grade classroom setting. So sayonara, mga third years. We'll be graduating soon. And to achieve that, I have an added mental and to achieve that added mental picture, kindly listen to the next report. If everything's a bit too much at the moment, take a breather. Your mental health is a top priority. So if you have any questions, you can just directly PM me online. So thank you very much for listening. Head on to the next video.